I gave people all the stuff they really needed. Social Security checks, utility bills, TV guide.
I want a TV guidance counselor. TV guidance counselor. Staying up to watch all night, and everything's gonna be alright with my TV guidance counselor.
Hey everybody, welcome. We're into January 2025. We're all still here at the moment, so that's a good thing. I am Ken Reed. I'm your TV guidance counselor, and this is the show TV Guidance Counselor. And this is the show where we talk about classic television, the entertainment industry, people's careers, our shared experiences, all those kinds of things. And this week I have a great guest. My guest is Amy Stoch, and Amy you probably best know as Missy, the stepmom in the Bill and Ted films. But she's been in a ton of stuff and also could not be a nicer person. Like, just amazingly nice. So many great stories, just smart, talented, just super cool person. And I was so happy to get the chance to sit down and talk to her. I think you'll love our chat. She's great and just did so much episodic TV, and it just has a really good, slightly outsider view of her time in Hollywood because, well, you'll hear about it here, but yeah, she's the best. So I think you'll love this episode. In fact, I know you will. And if you have other guests you want me to have on the show, I'm trying to book through for the rest of 2025. You can email me at ken@ikenread.com or tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or kenreadtvgc@gmail.com. Still kind of working out stuff. Blue Sky's the most consistent social media right now. It's at Kenneth W. Reed. Probably ditching Facebook, Instagram soonish. So if you're there, let me know if you need to get my contact info, or it cannot be a problem if you become a patron, patreon.com/TV Guidance Counselor. Go there. If you're little as $1 a month, you can even be a free member. It's a huge help to the show. $5 and up, you get PDFs of the issues that we talk about that week. Or you can go to my YouTube page, YouTube channel's TV Guidance Counselor, and you can reach me there and request videos. And, I'll see what I can do for fun stuff in 2025. But in the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode with my guest, Amy Stoch.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
From the fabled Central Time, Amy, how are you?
I'm great. Fabled Central Time. I don't think I understand that, but that's okay.
Well, because you grew up in Ohio, right? That's the Central Time state,
I did.
right?
No, you're right. Now that I think about it, it was either Eastern Time or Pacific Coast. That thing in the middle just never really, it was only an hour earlier, and it was like, okay, why bother? But okay.
Well, see, I was always jealous. So it comes up on the show often because we'll look at a TV guide, and like as an East Coaster, I was always jealous of the Central Time people because you got like 10 o'clock shows at 9. If you had a bedtime, you could watch Love Boat.
Oh my gosh, Love Boat. Yeah, no, that's true. You're very right.
So it was, not fair.
Well, unfortunately, now my bedtime is at least 9 o'clock. So
me too. So, I'm like, if I get booked for a stand-up gig and I'm like, wait, it doesn't end till 9? Yes. Like I'm going to have to take a nap.
Yes, yeah.
But so you're growing up there, which is not an entertainment mecca, shall we say, to put it plainly.
Yes, Cleveland, Ohio, though. Actually, it's interesting that you say that because my parents, when I was a kid, they took us all to Music Carnival in Cleveland, the Cleveland Playhouse, the Cleveland Orchestra. Cleveland is much misaligned, and please don't even think about the Browns right now. Okay, go there. But Cleveland is an artistic city, and here's the PhD coming out. Cleveland Playhouse was one of the first regional theaters in the 30s that really made a name for themselves. So Cleveland is much misaligned with its arts scene. And like I said, I remember, I can't even remember how old I was, maybe 5, 6 years old. I remember Mary Martin in Peter Pan at the Hannah. And I remember, beautiful shows that my parents would take me to. And that's what lit the spark in me, with the whole acting thing was just my mom and dad just took us everywhere. And there were great shows to go see in Cleveland. So.
Which is kind of the best thing I think a parent can do, is just to take kids to stuff. Like, even if you don't think they'll like it, like, they'll get something out of it. And yeah, I mean, Cleveland, obviously the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there now, but even like Akron, I always think, like, I've had Devo on the show, who are an Akron band, and Chrissy Hine from the Pretenders is from Akron, and there's like a bunch of people who I think people don't necessarily consider being from that area. And then of course the Drew Carey Show, which is I think the only sitcom set in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. And Bob Hope.
Yes, and, absolutely.
I mean, you could go on with a list of celebrities, and of me, of course.
Yes, you of course. Because you came in sort of an interesting way, in that did you start modeling first and then got Star Search, or was it kind of a whim to do Star Search?
No, yeah, good question. These are just 45 years in this business is just rolling through my brain right now. But basically, if you want to know the progression, basically it was, I graduated from Ashland College, which is now Ashland University, in 1980. Way last century. 1980.
Very young.
I went to New York City and I studied at the American Academy for Dramatic Arts for 1 year. And that was it. That's all I could take. I came back to Cleveland after that. And for 2 years, that's when I got into the modeling. Plus doing part-time work at a bank and trying to figure out what am I doing with the rest of my life. I got into Willoughby School of Fine Arts. I started to teach in their summer program. My sister and I got into community theater there. But I started out with the Dorian Lay Agency in Cleveland, Ohio. And man, Cleveland rocks, folks. I'm sorry. But it just freaking rocks, especially in 1982. The modeling market in Cleveland, Ohio was phenomenal. We had such a good group of people. I got a lot of ads, of course, but I also got a national ad for Bonnie Bell makeup, cosmetics. They flew me to New York from Cleveland to shoot. I was just like, so fun and had a great time. Well, my agent at Dorian Lay, the owner of the Dorian Lay Agency, was retiring, and she wanted to take some of her top models over to Shirley Hamilton's in Chicago. So I was one of the lucky six. She took my portfolio over there, and I went to Chicago and met with Shirley Hamilton, and that was it. I got signed, and I moved to Chicago, which is just another amazing, fantastic city. Talk about a theater town, folks. Love it. Okay. So, yeah, I moved to Chicago and I was Kmart queen. I did so much catalog work. But that's where the Star Search opportunity came up. They put out, obviously, the call to a lot of agents, and I had 2 auditions set up because I was an actor, and I kept telling them, I'm an actor. I want to be an actor. So they set up the acting and then the spokesmodel, and for some reason, the acting audition got lost or,
Right.
I don't know what happened. It got canceled. So I did the spokesmodel audition, and lo and behold, got on the freaking show. I was a 5'6", flat-chested nobody from Cleveland, Ohio, who was Kmart queen, and all of a sudden I'm on Star Search. It was freaking amazing. Plus, the commercial market in Chicago was great. I did one of my first commercials for AM, PM, Mini Market. That thing. And that's where I got Taft Art Lead for SAG. It was a SAG commercial, and I got Taft Art Lead. So I had that going for me. And they sent us to New York for Star Search to shoot our videos. And they shot 6 at a time. So if you won, they would have another one ready to go. If you lost, obviously, you got a race.
Those never happened. Yeah.
But, so we shot these videos in New York, and I had a ball. I had just an amazingly wonderful time. But every woman I went up against in the beginning, the first 3 shows of Star Search, then we went out to LA and shot the actual live show. Everyone, the opponent, when I was going up against, they were all these tall, beautiful statuesque, and I was this little thing down here. So the camera had to pull way back in order to get us in the same shot,
Right. For the 3 1/4 stars. For the yeah.
Oh, God. But yeah, Star Search. Oh, again, I'm going to sound like a cheerleader, but it was an amazing experience. It was ensemble. It was a family. I was on the same year as Rosie O'Donnell, Kenny Olland, Sinbad, and one of my best friends, who later became one of my best friends, Rebecca Bush, was on there too. But the thing is that, you know, you'd go all day, you'd rehearse all day, you'd go up against your opponent, and then you would shoot it in front of a live audience. And that's where I shined. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You put a microphone in my hand and I was gone. You know, I was like, woohoo, this is where I fit now. You know, I don't have the body and the statue or whatever for modeling, but man, you put a microphone in my hand and you give me copy, and that's where I really succeed. So, yeah, I think I won all of those times simply because I knew how to talk in front of the camera. And that was all my acting experience and all of that. So I was on the regular season shows I won 5 times. I lost on my 6th show, but made it to the semifinals, which was cool. But on my 6th show, there was one of the judges, was Sue Cameron. And after I lost, I was backstage saying goodbye to people and really kind of bummed out. And she found me backstage and she just handed me her card, said, call me tomorrow. I would like to represent you. And, you know, my career started that night because of Sue and leading artists and Patricia Richardson. Oh my goodness. Amazing. And women.
Yeah, it's almost like a classic Hollywood story that people are like, well, that doesn't happen. You know, where it's just like discovered, boom, and then you kind of hit the ground running.
It did. And I did. Yeah. And then I remember you would used to get feedback after a live audition, which don't really happen anymore. But you used to your agent would get feedback. And several times in the very beginning, she would get feedback like, where has she been all this time? Well, kind of right here.
Yeah, in the Midwest. Well, because like to put it in context for people, like Chicago was it was the hub of advertising, really. And like so many of the major department stores were sort of headquartered there or near there. You know, Bob Newhart comes from Chicago and I believe worked in the advertising world when he did his albums. Like it's sort of because it was centrally located, you could kind of do ad campaigns nationally from right in the middle. So it's not necessarily considered now like a hub of production necessarily, but it was. And a lot of people I know got their SAG cards through First doing stuff in Chicago. So it makes sense. And it's funny that you mentioned that you shine when you get to speak as the spokesmodel, because for my younger listeners, I guess Star Search was a big phenomenon. It was a syndicated show. It was on once a week. Ed McMahon hosted it, who was very famous from The Tonight Show. And at the time, it kind of felt old-fashioned, but now seems ahead of its time.
We're the precursor for America's Got Talent, The Masked Singer, any competition show. God, the Great British Bake Off. I mean, we really were the precursor for that. And at that time, the show was, like I said, it was a serious kickstart to not only my career, but I know several of my friends from that show also. It was a good jumping off point.
Yeah, I had Bobby Brown on, who I think won the spokesmodel one year.
Yeah, I think the very first year, right?
I think so, yeah. I think she had won Miss Teen USA and then that. And then the acting piece, which was really interesting, and they kind of dropped it after the first couple seasons, which is like as a kid growing up in Boston and interested in the arts and media, it was kind of an interesting behind the scenes kind of thing, because the acting thing they'd have a celebrity. It was usually like Tom Bosley. And they'd do the same scene twice with the different person. And it was an interesting thing to see how two different actors played the same role, which I can't think of another example where you would ever see that on TV side by side.
No, and I think that's true competition. I mean, literally, that's what you do in an audition. You are reading the same thing. The next person comes in, reads the same thing, and whoever wins gets the job. You know?
Right.
So, yeah, it was quite interesting. It was a real competition.
Yeah, and it made sense. And the spokesmodels, which I guess how would I explain what a spokesmodel even was for somebody? But it was sort of like almost like a host position. Like people who were spokesmodels would go on to be like a correspondent on like Entertainment Tonight or something like that would be kind of
exactly.
what it would be. But to your point, a lot of them absolutely beautiful people, but when they had to read copy, oh boy. There's not a lot of personality there. Not their fault. You can't always do both, but when someone like you goes on, it's
a skill, and I was lucky because I had acting training. I mean, I had an undergrad in acting. I've been acting since I was in second grade, basically. So, yeah, anybody who has that kind of live theater on-stage training is going to be able to do that. And people who don't are going to struggle a little, you know?
Was that your first time in LA when you went out for that show?
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. First time. Yeah. Yeah. I thought, wow, they put us up at, I think it was, the Sunset Hyatt right there on Sunset, and they put us up there. And then the theater was down Sunset Boulevard. Oh, no, it was down Hollywood Boulevard, like way down there. And I thought, oh, that's okay, I'll just walk.
Oh, boy. And what a street to walk.
Oh, my God. No. They said, no, you can't walk there. And I remember leaving the hotel that first night because I just kind of wanted to see stuff and I wanted to go get something to eat or whatever, and just kept walking. I'm like, where am I? Plus, there were hills everywhere. I thought, wait a minute, I thought LA was flat, right? Oh no, there are these massive hills that you're canyons and you're walking through, and I'm like, wow, this is not what I thought at all, right? When I actually was on the first few times, I was still living in Chicago. And then a friend and I decided, that's it, we're leaving, we're moving from there to LA. And we drove across country and everything. It was great. And what was so cool was that I was able to move to Los Angeles with a job happening, the Star Search. So I was having income as well as, being able to move there. And I had to buy my first car, which was a stick shift, which was a big mistake. No, I loved it eventually, but really, seriously, the first time I got in the car, I had to drive up a hill. And I'm like...
Do a hill start or a 3-point turn with that thing? Oof.
I was just scared I was going to roll back down. But yeah, and I'm driving around, and at that time, and I'm talking, when was this? 1985, okay? And at that time, folks, we didn't have Google Maps or we didn't have navigation. We had something called the Thomas Guide, which was this 130-page book of maps of the LA area. Well, I bought it, had no idea how to use it at all. And, you're as a young actor at that point, I mean, we really were at a heyday of acting in the 80s when I first moved there, because I had probably 3-4 auditions a day. I had packed my car with different outfits. I would be trying to drive and find these places all over LA. I'd stop at the farmer's market on 3rd and Fairfax, and I'd stop and change clothes and have, like a really light little whatever I could afford lunch, and then I get back in my car. But I'm looking at this map going, I have no idea how to read this. None. I mean, it took me 5 years to get to know how to read that map, right? And I remember this one particular audition. It was the first time I had down in Westwood, and I had never driven there. And I stopped to ask directions, and nobody spoke English very well, which is obviously something that is there. And they were trying to help me as much as they could, and I was trying to point to where I needed to go, and I just went, I found it eventually. But then I remember going home that night because I had just been, it was a very strange experience moving to Los Angeles. And I went home and I called my mom and I said, Mom, I think I moved to Mars. The maps. There's so much traffic. I have no idea where I'm going. It was, and none of my family had ever been there. So I was kind of like the first one to break the ground. But I'll tell you, after that initial shock, the next 20 years living in Los Angeles were some of the best of my life.
Yeah, once it clicks, it's amazing. Like the first, like, God forbid you have to go in the Hollywood Hills and find anything. Like, when I would go to people's houses and I had a GPS, I'm like barely finding their houses. I'm like, I don't know how people could find their own house before this. But then also as a New Englander, the first thing I would think when I drive up a hill is like, this is probably terrible in the winter. But then I'm like, oh wait, no, it's not. They don't have that.
There isn't any winter. No.
But I'm like, how would you
because
get
a lot
up
of,
this?
No, I get you. I understand that. And to go along with that, my first October in LA, I was like, okay, sweater weather. No, it's still 95 degrees, and it stayed, that way. But LA is just, it is my heart home. It really is. Cleveland is my home. Always will be. I love Cleveland. Love Chicago. Lived in New York. Love that too. But there's something about Los Angeles, and people think I'm crazy that I went back for another 10 years. But I'm not. I love it. It's got a vibe all to itself, and it's weird and wacky and whatever, and there's a lot of traffic. Oh well. It's on the hub of everything cultural and intersectional and diverse and all the things that I love as a human being. And having to move away from that again was very difficult. And I do miss it. But I am lucky enough, I still do teach at AMDA, my college for the performing arts out there in Hollywood. All my classes are online, asynchronous. But I do try to go back once a semester for graduation, for all the performances. And I just, as soon as I hit that tarmac at Burbank, I'm like, I'm home.
So I know you're a true LA. You fly into Burbank, and that's the key. You're not going messing with LAX.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, it's. I didn't go there till I was like 30 or something, and then I was like, why wasn't I here all the time? Like, the food's great, everyone's in a good mood, the weather's fantastic, and as someone who grew up loving movies and television, everything feels oddly comfortable because it's so familiar. Because it's, Burbank is actually what the Midwest feels like to you because you're used to watching it depicting, Wisconsin or something.
Exactly.
Which is amazing.
And I think that's very important is to note that it does feel like home. It feels like everybody's home,
Right.
So
you made a very interesting point about the time that you were there, that sort of mid-'80s time frame. And I talk about this in the show a lot too, in that it was sort of the nexus of this world that needed more content than it ever needed before, because you had still some old Hollywood stuff still hanging around, and you had drive-ins and movie theaters and cable and basic cable and direct-to-video. So like all of these outlets all of a sudden sprung up. So it was this huge boom in production, like unparalleled really before that. So it really was, there was probably so many auditions every day.
It was, yes, it truly was a golden time for me. Of course, I am a white female, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and that was the 80s. That was the late 80s, right? With the big hair and the big shoulder pads and the big everything else that I didn't have. So what always amazes me is, the content. Commercials were a huge part of my career, huge. I don't know how commercial actors make a living anymore, simply because there aren't a lot of them out there for anybody. I love athletes and celebrity endorsements, but when they start doing commercials, like every single commercial you see has got a celebrity endorser or an athletic.
Shacks and everything.
Where's the working actor?
Yeah.
That's what my friend and I always say, my friend Becky and I, we always commiserate. We go, I think we were really, in that 10-year time period, we were really part of the last of the solid working actor, where you weren't a star, because I wasn't a star, but I worked, and I worked a lot, and I was very lucky, very grateful. And now, being an older woman and looking back on it, going, wow, I guess I really was doing a lot. And that was without the boobs and the body and the, so people cast me, and I worked a lot, and I don't know that would happen now, because I was a working actor. I made my living as an actor.
Yeah, you kind of have to be independently wealthy to be an actor now. Like, there are comics that I know, even 10 years ago, they would get a Skittles ad or, whatever it was. And they're like, wow, now I can do stand-up for a year because I have an income.
Yeah.
And even that's gone away. It's a very strange thing.
It's not the market I knew by any means. In a lot of ways, it's good. In a lot of ways, it's really bad. When you have SAG ultra low budget you know what? You want me to be in your film and just, give me a pat on the back? If I believe in the script and if I believe in you, sure, I'll do that. I don't need an ultra low budget and $5
Right.
to do it. But that's what it is. Some of it is. A lot of it, like you said, for the plain working actor who's not the star, a lot of it is that low budget feature, ultra low budget. You don't make any money. Now that's a blanket statement. I'm sure there are projects out there that still shoot that still are quite good for the actor, which is fantastic. I did, speaking of Chicago and the market up there, last year I was very privileged to work on Chicago Fire. I did a very short little scene, had so much fun. Christian is just the nicest man ever. The director, all of them. Really a cool thing. But I hadn't worked in Chicago in, 40 years. So when I went up there and saw it was like 5 city blocks long, this huge filming center. It rivaled anything in Los Angeles. And all the 3 Chicagos, Fire, PD, and Med, are all shot there. I believe The Bear is also shot there.
I think so, yeah.
So it's like they have this amazing production company up there, and that was really cool to be a part of that and to feel that vibe again.
And unusual too, like it's, the actors that I know, I see them shooting more there than in LA. Like Steven Weber's been doing Chicago Fire, and I always see Steven's there, or directors that I know who are, older directors, but they were theatrical directors, and now they go do like 4 episodes of Chicago Fire or something, and it's kind of in a lot of ways kind of the last of its kind, or the only of its kind at the moment.
It really felt strange and wonderful to be back on a true major network ensemble 1-hour drama, because that's what we used to do all the time as guest stars. That's what we did back in the heyday. We would be guest stars on 1-hour shows. And
because that was your first stuff. Like you got like what's the modeling show?
Cover Up.
Cover Up with John Eric Hexum. That you Cover Up, or like Fall Guy. You were getting like these guest spots on these huge 1-hour dramas.
Matlock. I did Murder, She Wrote. I sat in between shots with Angela Lansbury, and we discussed cross stitching, which was quite cool. Now, and that's what I was saying before. It was like when I now look back on, because when you're going through it, you don't think, oh, wow, I'm going to be on set with this famous person and I'm going to go bother them and be in the, you don't do that. You're a professional. They hired you. You show up on time. You know your lines. You are, very collegial to work with. You are a professional person, and people appreciate that. Okay. So when I worked, when I got to now finally go, yeah, I guess you're right. I did do that. And, and just working with Andy Griffith, and because I grew up with Andy Griffith, and then being there with him on Matlock and just working with him and having just this amazing 20-minute takes of this final trial scene, because he liked to do it like a real live theater show. He didn't like a lot of cutting, and they told me that, and I was like, cool, let's give it a shot.
Everyone else would be like, oh my God.
20 minutes, but it was fun and it was great. And I remember walking back after lunch back to the set, and there's Don Knotts and Andy Griffith, and they're just kind of like jamming backstage. I went, oh, that's fun. Look at that. That's like that. But it took all of this time to now look back on that and go, yeah, you're right. I did work with some pretty phenomenal people and was very lucky and had just wonderful experiences. I mean, my God, I played James Arness's daughter. I played Beth Dillon. I have Dylan that I could put on my shirt. And I would be, that would be me. And then Michael Learned is my mother. She was amazing. And then Richard Kiley pulling me up, on the back end of a horse. He's like, come on, girl. And he hauls me up on the back ass of a horse. Stuff like that. But Gunsmoke, oh my goodness, people ask me a lot about that. And those 4 movies of the week with Gunsmoke were, again, I keep saying everything's the best, but my God, I got to ride in a real stagecoach from the 1800s. I got to work with people like Richard Kiley and Michael Learned and James Brolin, I believe, was on, and Bruce Boxleitner,
Yep.
as well as James Arness, who was just the most wonderful, nicest man. Okay, so here's a fun little story from that. My dad was a Gunsmoke fan from forever. We used to watch every Sunday night, right? So when I was first cast on that, my parents used to come, and wherever location I was, my mom would always be there. My mom came to everything, which was so fun.
Of course you would.
Then my dad came out and visited, and it was the first Gunsmoke set, and we were down in San Antonio or whatever. And I will never, I'm going to start to cry, I'm sorry, but I will never forget when I got to introduce my dad to his hero, James Arness. My dad looked like a little 12-year-old meeting his movie idol. And it really just is one of the warmest, most amazing memories. And Jim was so nice to my dad and talked with him and, hi, nice to meet you. It was just, it's that. And a lot of people don't know about those things, okay? They see the movie or they read the pop magazines or the blogs or whatever, the popular stuff, the rag mags, right? But they don't get it. That's not what this is about. It's about working as an actor with other people who are committed to the art form. It's about the community that you form when you're on the set. It's about doing this work together and knowing that possibly what you're doing is reaching people and touching them in some way that makes them feel good about themselves or their lives or whatever, right? I don't, and never have. You don't do it for the fame and the glory and the money. I do it because I absolutely love it, and I loved moments like that with my dad. And there are a billion more that I could probably tell you.
Because you earned that. And like you're working with him as a peer as well. Like you made your way in there. And especially those older generation of actors, I've discovered for the most part, with very few exceptions, were the most down-to-earth, sort of blue-collar, like punching the clock almost sort of actors who treat everyone on the set like we're all making the same thing. And if this is good, it's good for all of us. And that was sort of that classic Hollywood thing that you were still able to be a part of.
Yes.
With the tail end.
It's just a joy of what you do and being able to do it together. And some of the old character actors that would come on to the 4 movies of the week we did for Gunsmoke, they would bring in people who did the show in 1958 or 1972. They'd bring back these character actors, and every single one would go straight up to Jim and shake his hand, nice to see you, and he'd remember every single one of them.
Of course.
And I loved that.
Yeah, he's not sitting in his trailer, which is, it's funny to me too that you clearly have like a comedic aptitude, and your timing is
my
great.
life's a joke. That was me. Thanks, kid.
Yes, I'm laughing at you right now. No, but like you have very good comic time. Like you have the comedic skills that like you just have or you don't, right?
Yeah,
and so you're doing these sort of dramedy roles, and the sort of comedy roles in your resume there's not as many as I would imagine there would be, but they tend to be your most the things people tend to be most memorable. Like, Summer School, you have a relatively small part in that movie, but it's incredibly memorable.
I get so many people remembering me from Summer School. I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. I barely remember.
It's like 2 days of work, probably, right?
No, it was only one, and it was the first day of shooting, and it was the excitement and everything about starting to shoot. I honestly, again, this is one of those things where I couldn't think about it when I was going through it, but when I look back on it now, I went, wait a minute. I got hired by Carl Reiner.
Yeah.
I got to work with Carl Reiner, and I got to be directed by Carl Reiner, and I just go, wow, I'm in awe of myself. It's like, wow. But yeah, no, and Mark Harmon's such a nice guy. It was a short, fun, cute, stupid little scene, and I got to pet the dog, and it was great. He was wonderful. But with that, again, Mark was such a great guy, nice to work with. He felt a little uncomfortable doing comedy. So here's how we were in the parking lot. Remember the scene? We were in the parking lot and, whatever. And we were shooting at a local school in their parking lot. And off in the distance were the classrooms and then a hedge of bushes. They were like maybe 10, 12 feet away from us where we were shooting. So this is the way Carl Reiner directed Mark Harmon. Because he was so excited about doing this. He would set up the scene, give us both direction, and then he'd yell action, and he'd jump behind the bushes. Behind the bushes, so that when he yelled cut, he could jump back over the bushes and be right there to give us more comments and then jump back over. Summer school was just a great experience all around. Again, I was very lucky.
But you sort of have to suppress your awe. And I mean, even at my very low level, I have that too, where I'm always like, I would freak out after, or like when I would see the thing and I'd be like, oh, wow, yeah, that happened. Or like, because you wouldn't be able to work otherwise.
Yes, exactly.
Was there anyone that really kind of broke you out of that, though? Like you couldn't suppress, or like that you weren't able to, like it was really nerve-wracking? I mean, you're talking about working with Andy Griffith and Carl Reiner. Probably not, I'm guessing. But
good question. Not that I've worked with, again, because I knew I wanted to be professional, and I was just so pleased to meet all of them. And the more I worked, the more I realized exactly what you said, is that these people are down-to-earth, real people who just like to work.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, it was fantastic. I think the biggest freak-out moment I ever had was not on a set I was working on, and it was not somebody I was working with. But again, it was during Matlock, and we were on Warner Brothers, and I was walking back, and I happened to be walking down one of the streets to get to the soundstage. And over to my right up ahead, I saw this trailer, really nice, beautiful trailer. It had astroturf and plants and things, and there was someone standing outside talking to someone with a clipboard. And the closer I get, I went, oh my God, that's Barbara Streisand! And I almost flipped right then and there. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, what do I do? Do I keep walking or do I wait? What do I do? It was just the weirdest. Yeah, so there you go. That was one of those moments.
Because you can never tell how you're going to react. Because even if you're like, I'm like, I got this, I'm used to this. And sometimes you'll run into someone and like, you're taken aback by your own reaction, which is always kind of amazing. Yeah, exactly. Get that. You were also in a movie that they shot here in Boston, a lot of it, but I don't think your scene was there, which was Soul Man.
Oh, Soul Man. Ours was out in L.A.
Yeah.
That was my first film. Okay. Again, shot on the very first day of shooting.
Yep. Steve Miner, I think, directed.
Steve Miner.
Yep.
And I was in bed with C. Thomas Howell and Ari Gross.
Yeah.
What a tough job that was. Oh my goodness. How difficult.
Right off The Outsiders and yeah.
Oh my God. So again, very first day of filming. So balloon bouquets are showing up on the set and everybody's sending congratulations. And the scene itself was very excited for the two guys, and there I am, popping up out of the sheets. I'm very proud of the credit of that particular film because it says, and I quote, "Girl in Bed." That was my first movie credit, guys. Girl in Bed. Yeah, my dad wasn't all that pleased about that.
No, I imagine not. But still, yeah. I mean, there's a hell of a cast in that movie, and that movie is discussed often. But when I was growing up here, if they were shooting anything in Boston, I always went and watched them film it. You know, Spencer for Hire, Soul Man, they filmed it in Harvard Square. And I mentioned this anecdote a lot in the show, but Harvard wouldn't let them film on Harvard campus. They never do. But there's one block in Harvard Square that they let them film on. So every driving or walking scene, it's like a Hanna-Barbera Flintstones. They just keep walking around the same exact thing. It's like they're driving for 20 minutes and you keep seeing this yellow house go by.
I didn't know that. That's very funny.
It's very funny.
That's cool. That's ingenuity.
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
That is before, folks, that is before CGI and before whatever AI content. You had to really figure it out.
Yep. And Steve Reiner was a good person to do that, who came from, horror movies and low budget stuff and was sort of the king of a pilot movies for a long time for that very reason.
Also a very nice guy to work with.
Yeah, what a weird career he had. And then, of course, what probably most people know you from the most is the Bill and Ted movies. And Ed Solomon's a buddy. He's been on the show. And it was nice to see you in the third one there. But
it's nice to be seen in the third.
Yeah, it was nice to have it.
Yeah.
But it's those movies in particular were sort of a fluke hit. They sat on the shelf for a while before they even came out. Yeah. So I imagine when you were making it, you were kind of like, it's just another gig, and then you almost forget about it, move on, and by the time it's a massive hit, you're like, what?
Yeah, no, it was a complete shock, I think, to all of us. So many Bill and Ted stories. Oh my goodness, where do I start? First of all, I was just being fired off of, not fired, I shouldn't say that. I was being killed off of Days of Our Lives. As Britta, they were slowly killing me off.
Which isn't permanent necessarily in a soap opera.
Well, no, I think I did come back as a ghost or a vision.
Your own sister, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, so it was as I knew I was leaving that show, my agent started to get me auditions again, and one of them was for Excellent Adventure, and had no idea what it was, who it was. The script was very cute. The audition scene was, the watering scene where they land behind me in the thing, and I'm introduced to all of them. As you can tell, there's not a lot of me talking in that.
Right.
So, how do you audition with that 6 times? And yes, I went back 6 times, okay? Simply because, as we have more than amply suggested in this podcast already, I didn't have the boobs for the job, okay? Let's just put it that way. Just didn't. I mean, Missy was supposed to be a bombshell, right?
Well, she was.
Well, no, I didn't have the equipment, the physical equipment. But what I tell everybody when anybody asks 6 times, I said, yeah, because every time I went back, same scene. Every time I went back, I tried to do something a little different facial expression, a little different that. That's where that, hi, Missy, and then my look. I mean, Mom, that was created in the audition scenes. I came up with that. And every time I made them laugh. And I'm hoping, and I'm pretty sure that's probably why I got the part, even though I didn't have the boobs for it.
But that's more important. Like, it's a comedy, and it's it's those memorable things where, especially because, Ed and comes from improv, and those guys who they're like, they want that kind of stuff, Oh,
Ed and Chris developed those 2 characters from doing improv for stand-up, right? But, so I made them laugh, and here's the other thing that I like to think I did for this character is I didn't play her as a ditzy blonde dumbbell. I'm a blonde. I really take offense to people who think that blondes are dumb. I'm not. I have a PhD.
Yes.
But so I didn't play her as a ditzy sexpot blonde. I didn't have the body for it, for one thing, thank goodness. And I loved the comedy. There was comedy in there. And I think the whole situation of her, just having graduated from high school and setting up with the history professor, I don't think that's pretty dumb. I think, already got the house, already got the kid, he's already grown up. I mean, come on. How smart can you get? So, so that was that audition thing. And then we get together and we go to Arizona and we shoot the film, and nobody was anybody except obviously George Carlin, whom to this day, I never got to meet, never worked on set with him. There's one of those where I would have gone, that's when I would have melted, because I've been listening to George Carlin since I was a kid, right? So I never got to meet him. But everybody else was just starting out. We were all just, boy, did we have fun in that. We just had fun. We were young and funny, and the scenes were funny, and they were goofy, and Ed and Chris were goofy, and Steve was goofy, the director. So we had a good time. But yeah, it then sat on the shelf in the vault because DEG went bankrupt. The company went bankrupt. So, and this is how I understand it, is that after all the litigation was over with, Orion Pictures was allowed to come in and pick whatever they wanted from that vault. And they saw this little film and they just threw it together and stuck it out. It was their top grossing film of that year.
Right.
Why?
It was so different. I think it was so different,
I guess, but it was still just, you're right. It kind of ushered in a whole new genre of dumb being cute and funny, but not dumb. It was smart dumb. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was oddly wholesome. So like prior to that, you had like teen comedies were all like the TNA sex comedies and Revenge of the Nerds and that sort of thing. And so this was sort of a smart, silly, dumb, like I put it in the same category as like Peter's Big Adventure or something like that, where it's, eccentric and weird and there's a sincerity to it. So like even your character, which could have been played as like an arch sort of stepmother thing, she's like sincerely like chipper and like, we're doing this. I'm, like it's all, it has a sincerity.
You're not doing it until you do your chores. I mean, what else can you do? Right. You got a teenage son. He's got chores to do. Look, I'm not taking you anywhere. Right? But that's the whole thing is that you're exactly right. And it was this whole naivete, but this funny, but it was also smart and poignant. And we just had so much fun. And that scene where I'm driving them in my mom's station wagon, I mean, even that's just stupid. I had a Missy car and a mom station wagon. But I've got all of the major leads in my station wagon, and I guess they couldn't afford a stunt driver, so it was me. Right?
Well, that was a lot of pressure.
So I'm driving and I'm hitting the garbage cans and missing the extras and pulling up, and a friend of mine was watching the scene being taken. They're visiting the set, and afterwards he said, "Do you realize you had every star in your car, and if you crashed, you would have really." I'm like, thanks for telling me that now.
Thanks for waiting until after the scene for letting me know that.
Then it hit the movies and the theaters, and people loved it. They loved it, and hence, Bogus Journey is on its way 2 years later. So,
but then that even sat on the shelf for like a year or something.
A Bogus Journey did? I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, it was retooled because I think it was the original The Go to Hell script, which was like slightly darker, and then they were like, "Oh, I don't know, this is what we expected." So it was like a weird thing where that sat for a little bit.
I still have that script, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh, that's probably.
I still have the Bill and Ted Go to Hell script. So.
That's very cool to have. Are you the kind of person who keeps mementos from the stuff you've worked on?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. You know what I would do, which is really cool, and I don't know what. Well, I guess it harkens back to high school days when you had everybody sign your yearbook. I would take the front of my script, the covers of my final shooting script, whenever I took to set, and I'd walk around to everybody and say, "Would you just sign this? You don't have to say anything nice. Just sign it, whatever." You can't believe I have Andy Griffith's signature. I have Jim Arness. I have Angela Lansbury. I have everybody I worked with pretty much on those scripts. So I do have those and my original shooting scripts. They're all neatly in a lovely box. When we were on set for the first Gunsmoke down in Del Rio, Texas, it was right on the Rio Grande River between Texas and Mexico, right? So one of my makeup artist, who was a doll, Melanie, she said, "Well, we collect heart rocks wherever we go on location." I said, "What's a heart rock?" So me and this other guy and Melanie were all down by the riverbank looking for rocks. And lo and behold, I found a heart rock, one that is shaped like a heart. That's still on my bookshelf. Okay. I mean, yeah, there are things that just speak to what you did, but I do have a lot of the Polaroids still when they take
the set continuity.
For set consistency and stuff like that. I still have some of those. But I did keep my scripts and those autographs, and that's what's really cool.
Is there anything you worked on that you're particularly proud of that maybe not enough people have seen, or that you would want more people to have checked out?
Ooh, good question. My dissertation? Oh,
Yeah,
wait,
you can post that. I mean, I'm sure it's great.
No, it's not. But anyway, it was enough to,
It worked.
In terms of film and TV and stuff I've done, that's an excellent question. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute and let me just think.
So while you're thinking, it's interesting too, because one of the other things that comes up a lot in the show, especially in the era that we're talking about, is you were kind of a movie actor or a TV actor. And if you moved from one or the other, it was because you sort of moved up, or you were an older actor moved down. Andy Griffith's off of Facing the Crowd and he's back on TV, but you kind of went back and forth, like seemingly with ease, where there's no sort of cutoff, like, from Days of Our Lives to a movie, then back to TV, without sort of encountering, I imagine, the issues with that. Like, I know a lot of people, their manager would be like, no, you can't take this part because then you're back on TV forever. Were you encountering that?
About actors who wouldn't go on commercial auditions for that very reason. I'm like, are you crazy? That's most of my income.
Right.
Why am I going to turn that down? Right. I in the agents and managers I've had, that was never an issue. It was, this is a good project. Do you want to work? Do you want to audition for it? And I'd be like, yeah, I don't care. If it's TV, it's film, it's stage. I've done some of that. Commercials. I've done trade shows. Well, that was back in the model.
Right. Those are probably the hardest work of all the three. That's a long day.
The Chicago Car Show, I was a representative of Buick, and we had nice suits, but we had heels. But the cool thing about that was Walter Payton was their spokesperson.
Oh, nice.
So I got to meet him, and I got to work with him, which was really cool. No, there was no question of that. If it was a good project, let's do it. Let's audition. You never know. One thing I was pretty strong about, very strong about and very adamant about is nudity for me, or heavy sexual scenes. It's not my gig. I don't feel comfortable doing them. I applaud people who do, but that's not me. For a couple of reasons, one of which I just stated, is just not me.
Yeah, it doesn't. Right? The kind of characters that you seem to excel at, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
And I'm, I don't think anybody wants to watch that.
Wow.
But the other reason, and this is just purely personal, is quite honestly, I could not imagine my father sitting in a movie theater watching his baby daughter, cavorting on screen, having sex and being, naked. I couldn't do that to him or my family or anybody, really. So that was a big consideration for me. Now, at 66, you want me to take my clothes off?
Sure.
Yeah, I am, baby.
I'm proud of this now. Yeah.
Let's put it this way. No one wants that. Not even me. And there are no projects available for a 66-year-old woman to take her clothes off unless you really want to scare people. But so that was not a consideration for me. And when I teach my students, I tell them that story and I say, look, this is your decision. Nobody else's, yours. And I was lucky enough, like I mentioned, I had women agents, which was a big help.
And unusual.
I had, yes, and they were all women and they were strong women and they understood when I said, no, I don't want to audition for this. And I don't want to, they would always bring them to me just to say, do you want to try? And I said, no.
They at least gave you the choice instead of just sort of. Well, you also, if it was like 85 when you're really getting those roles too, I think you benefited from the heyday of the sort of low budget exploitation movies kind of being mostly done, like the sort of horror slasher, like so many actresses that I know from like 80 to 85, those were like the first gigs. So it was kind of like, that's all you had.
Yes. And some of them were non-union, and being a union actor, and I'm still a union actor, I will live and die, and in the afterlife, I will be a union actor. I believe very strongly in SAG-AFTRA and in my union. I don't do that kind of non-union work, which is proliferating right now. Yeah. Unfortunately. But that also helped because the union protected you. they said, look, we will guard you. On set, if anything happens, you let us know. Now they have this amazing thing, which a lot of my students are looking into in the profession, these intimacy coordinators, right? Love that.
Yes, I have friends who do that.
Oh, that is fantastic. Okay. That is a good thing that is happening. But, the early 80s, it saw a lot of that, but there wasn't a ton of the non-union stuff.
Right.
Now it's everywhere.
Right.
Now, like I said, I don't know how. I'm teaching young performers on how to get into the business. It's completely different.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell them other than you got to do your gig. You got to do your own stuff. You got to shoot your own stuff. Everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
You got to enter film festivals. Theater is still alive and well. Go do that. Write your own. Write the stories you want to see on the screen, and then see if you can get those made. I teach a class in that. I teach a class called Storycraft for Marginalized Identities. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Is teach them, I want you to tell your stories. What are the stories you want us to tell in Hollywood? Because it's going to take a lot to change. But there is change. And we've always got to be looking forward to the positives in that. And I think there are a lot. Right?
Yeah, anyone can make a movie now, which is great, but also anyone can make a movie now, which floods things.
Sucks.
So,
yeah, exactly.
As an old punk rock DIY guy, I always say, like, even with the podcast, I'm on the digital shelf next to $1 million studio shows, right next to them with my sort of paltry, gum and tape studio, which is kind of amazing. But also there's 2,000 other shows that are, so you have the bar of entry is a lot lower and more easy, which is good. But then sometimes I'll see things and I'm like, I kind of wish we had some gatekeepers sometimes who would be like, you need to get better before we give you some money.
Totally agree. Well, that's what I said about the union. Let's not make everything a $5 union job, okay? But the thing is, through all of this, Ken, and what you've done for 10 years now?
Yeah.
Congratulate yourself.
Thank you.
Give yourself a pat on the back, okay? Because what you've done is you've stayed true to what you believe and what you want to do. And in this world today, we all have to do that. No matter what it takes, no matter how hard it is to fight for that, no matter how many setbacks. I tell my students this all the time. Look, I'm on the other side of the hill now. I see where I started, where we've come, what's happening, how many steps we are being kicked backwards, but I also see the progress, and that's what you have to hold on to.
Yeah.
Is that there is change, and it does happen, and it does stick, but you can't sit back and let it and wait for it. It's not going to wait for anybody. You got to go get it.
Right. And you can now. You can.
Yes.
And I said it to comics too, where I'm like, hey, if you do this at the end of the day, maybe nothing happens, but you did a good body of work and made good stuff.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good accomplishment in and of itself, because a lot of people can't say that.
To answer your question about is there any project that I've done that I wish more people would see? No, quite honestly. I mean, no. I love everything I've done. Some of it was popular, some of it wasn't, which is fine. I think Mr. Student Body President was such a fun little Apple TV show that I don't think a lot of people see. That was cute and fun. But no, I guess honestly, it wouldn't be something on camera. It would be my writing. It would be my thoughts. It would be, again, all joking aside, my scholarly work, my scholarship, the dissertation that I wrote, the things I believe in terms of theater and film and its vast, important history to humankind and what it does for us as a human race and what it's always done. I mean, I have a PhD in theater history from the University of Illinois, right here in beautiful Champaign, Urbana. But the thing is that I love it. I love everything about what I've committed my life to since, seriously, the second grade. When I came home from career day in second grade and told my mother I was going to be a movie star. That was it. That was it for me. I was lucky in that I found that. But it wasn't just a movie star. I love history. I've studied thousands of years of it. And I love it. And I will keep loving it because it has so much to teach us. and we just need to listen to it.
Yeah.
Finally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been so great to talk to you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
It's been fun. Thank you. I love talking to people about the business. It is my heart and soul.
Absolutely lovely human. Such a nice time talking to her. Just fantastic stories and just a good person and super talented and always fun to talk to people like that, and it's always fun to find out people whose work you've watched and enjoyed are good people. Always nice. So thanks again to her for sitting down and talking to me, and thanks to you for listening to this episode and listening in general. And if you do listen, and whatever whatever platform, that's the word I'm looking for, you listen to, if you have a second, you want to rate and review the show, it helps keep it up in the in people's minds, as we still get new listeners. So that's weird. You're year 11, almost into year 12 of the show. Anyway, I'll be here next week, so I hope you will too, for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
Oh my God, that's Barbara Streisand!